Let me ask you something that might sting. What if the dream they sold you wasn't a dream at all, but a cleverly disguised trap? What if you've spent your entire life walking toward a finish line that doesn't exist, chasing a promise that was never meant to be fulfilled? This video is not about finance. It's not about investment strategies, pensions, or 401(k) plans. It's about something far deeper, a lie embedded into the very architecture of modern life. A psychological, philosophical, and cultural illusion called retirement. And today, we're going to tear it apart layer by layer until we finally see what lies underneath. We grow up with the idea planted like a seed: work hard now, suffer now, obey now, so that someday, you can finally rest. That's the myth. The sacred timeline of modern existence: childhood, education, career, retirement. Then, and only then, you are allowed to breathe. But here's the truth: retirement is not freedom. It's a reward offered to keep you in line. It's a delayed permission slip to live. And that's the most dangerous kind of manipulation, because it doesn't imprison you with chains. It imprisons you with hope.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's break it down. Think about what retirement represents in our collective consciousness. It's not just a financial milestone, it's a spiritual one. It symbolizes arrival, completion, peace, the end of obligation. But why should peace only be available after 40 years of submission? Why is joy something you have to earn through decades of exhaustion? And more troubling, what happens when you get there and realize the dream was hollow? That the identity you spent your life building was tied to work, and now you don't know who you are without it. That your health is failing just as your time becomes your own. These aren't edge cases. They are the norm, and no one talks about it. Because to question retirement is to question the entire logic of modern life. Here's the philosophical problem. Retirement assumes a linear life, a predictable path. But life is never linear. It breaks, bends, twists. It surprises you. It takes people early. It gives you moments of clarity at 23 and breakdowns at 65. So why do we treat life like a conveyor belt, where value is front-loaded into productivity and meaning is delayed until the very end? That's not just bad planning. That's spiritual malpractice, because it teaches you to defer your aliveness, to store your joy in a vault, hoping one day you'll be allowed to open it. But what if that vault never opens? What if the key was always in your pocket, but you were too afraid to use it? Let's go deeper. The retirement lie is built on a deeper illusion, the illusion of security. We're told that by working hard, saving, investing wisely, and following the rules, we can protect ourselves from the chaos of existence. But security is a myth. You can lose your job. The market can crash. Your body can betray you. The world can change overnight, as it did for millions during the pandemic. And yet we continue to live as if planning a future guarantees we'll live long enough to enjoy it. But life is not a straight road. It's a storm, a dance, a puzzle. So why do we keep living like we're preparing for a calm that may never come? Now here's the twist that no retirement seminar will ever tell you. You're not supposed to wait until 65 to be free. You're supposed to be free now. Freedom is not a destination, it's a way of being. It's not about having no job. It's about having no internal prison. It's about reclaiming your time, your energy, your creativity, and your soul now, not later. But to do that, you have to make a radical shift from living a life of delayed permission to a life of immediate presence. And that's terrifying, because it means abandoning the script. It means rewriting the meaning of success. It means asking, what if I stopped waiting? What if I lived today as if this was the retirement I've been hoping for all along? Let's pause here and ask a brutal question. What are you postponing right now, and why? What dream, what relationship, what adventure, what version of yourself are you putting on hold until it's safe, until it's time, until you're ready? And who told you that delay was wisdom? Because maybe, just maybe, it's not wisdom. Maybe it's fear, dressed up in the language of responsibility. Maybe you've been told that sacrificing your present for a future payoff is virtuous, but what if it's a slow form of death? Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying don't plan. I'm not saying quit your job, run into the woods, and burn your savings. This isn't about recklessness. It's about reclaiming agency. It's about asking whether the system you're living in actually serves your soul or just survives off your submission. Because if retirement is the only time you're allowed to rest, to travel, to explore, to breathe, then what exactly is the rest of your life for? Who benefits from that equation? And who suffers? Let me tell you something powerful. I've met people in their 30s who live like they're retired not because they have millions in the bank, but because they've designed their life around meaning, not money. I've also met people in their 60s who are still working not because they have to, but because they want to, because they've never stopped growing, never stopped giving, never stopped being alive. Retirement, then, is not a number. It's not an age. It's a philosophy, a choice, a way of seeing time not as something to hoard, but something to honor. And that brings us to the most radical idea of all. What if retirement is a daily practice, not a distant event? What if every day you ask, how can I retire from fear today? From guilt? From people-pleasing? From waiting? What if you retired from the idea that you are only valuable when producing? What if you stop treating freedom as something you earn and start seeing it as something you embody? Here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine you've just retired today. Not financially, but existentially. You've been released from the script, from the expectations, from the timeline. Now what? What does your day look like? Who do you spend time with? What do you create, love, pursue? What do you finally give yourself permission to feel, to try, to say? And now, why aren't you doing that already? What's stopping you? Is it money? Maybe. But more often, it's belief. It's programming. It's the lie that says, not yet, not now, later. But the truth is, later is the most dangerous word in the human vocabulary. It's the graveyard of dreams. It's the delay button on your soul. And sometimes, later becomes never. So I challenge you right here, right now, to ask yourself, what would it look like to live as if retirement wasn't a future event? but a current mindset. What would it look like to retire from postponing your life? Because here's what they don't tell you. The freedom you're waiting for is not at the end of your career. It's at the end of your excuses. Unmasking the system who really benefits from the retirement myth and why you're not supposed to question it. Now that we've questioned the notion of retirement as a life goal, we have to go further. We have to ask who planted this idea in our heads in the first place? Who benefits from an entire population believing they must delay their deepest desires, their freedom, their self-expression, until the very end of their productive years? This is where it gets uncomfortable. Because the retirement story isn't just a cultural norm, it's the cornerstone of economic obedience. It's not just about you. It's about keeping the machine running. And the machine does not work unless you believe in the myth. Let's step back. Retirement as a formal concept didn't exist for most of human history. Ancient societies didn't have a word for it. People worked in rhythms of life, not in linear timelines. Elders remained active contributors in wisdom, craft, and community. The idea that you sell your time for 40 years in exchange for a 20-year period of rest is a modern invention shaped by industrialization, reinforced by governments, and weaponized by corporations. Why? Because it creates a compliant, predictable, and self-regulating workforce. If you believe that your reward is coming later, you're more likely to tolerate the suffering of now. You're less likely to question the system. You'll clock in, you'll obey, you'll endure. Because you've been promised something at the end of the tunnel. But here's the philosophical trap. The tunnel doesn't have an end. It has a loop. Most people don't retire into freedom. They retire into confusion, into identity crisis, into declining health, and sometimes into financial anxiety. Why? Because they were never taught how to live, they were only taught how to prepare. Retirement is sold as the final act of liberation, but in truth, it often becomes just another form of waiting. And waiting is the slowest death. Let's look at who gains when you believe retirement is the goal. Corporations gain your loyalty. They gain your silence. They gain your best years. You trade your creativity, your vitality, your energy for a paycheck that keeps you locked in place. The government gains too. They gain control over how and when you access your own money. Retirement accounts, pensions, Social Security, these are not gifts. They're tools of deferral. They encourage you to live in the future, not the present. And the financial industry? They thrive on your fear. They sell you the illusion of security through complex retirement products, all while profiting from your anxiety about the unknown. But here's something no one tells you. The system is not designed for you to win. It's designed for you to participate. That's the game. And participation is sustained through belief. You were taught to believe in retirement the same way children are taught to believe in Santa Claus, because if you stopped believing, the whole illusion would collapse. But unlike Santa, this belief shapes your entire life. It determines your choices, your sacrifices, your sense of time. And worst of all, it convinces you that your best life is always later. Let's be brutally honest, most people don't even make it to retirement. Or if they do, they arrive in bodies that are tired, minds that are dulled, and spirits that are rusted from decades of deferring joy. How many people do you know who worked their whole lives only to die within a few years of retiring? How many people finally buy the boat, take the trip, start the project only to realize they no longer have the energy for it? That is the tragedy of living according to a script you never wrote. And the worst part, you were never meant to write it. The script was handed to you, and you were told it was noble to follow it. But what if it's not noble? What if it's just convenient for them? Let's turn the lens inward. Why do we keep buying into the retirement lie? Because it gives us a sense of control, or a promise, a schedule. It helps us cope with the discomfort of uncertainty. It tells us that the suffering of today is meaningful because one day we'll be rewarded. That's a powerful psychological mechanism. But it's also a dangerous one because it conditions us to endure instead of evolve. It trains us to postpone instead of pursue. And over time, we forget how to dream at all because dreaming becomes something for after work, for when I'm older, or when I retire. Here's a radical thought. What if you stopped waiting for permission to live the life you actually want? What if you stopped organizing your life around eventual escape and started building a life you don't want to escape from? That's not easy. That's not comfortable. But that's real. And real is rare in a world built on illusion. Let me offer you a vision, a life where retirement is not a cliff you fall off, but a phase you flow into naturally. A life where you integrate work, rest, play, and purpose across every decade, not just the last one. A life where your identity is not tied to your job title, and your value is not measured by your productivity. A life where you design your days based on meaning, not just money. That life is possible. But it requires one thing: the courage to question everything you were taught about success. Ask yourself, who am I when I'm not working? What would I do if I didn't have to prove anything? What would my life look like if I stopped organizing it around escape? These are not easy questions, but they are liberating ones. And let's not pretend this is just about money. It's about mindset. I've met people with millions who are still trapped in the retirement mindset, constantly deferring joy, addicted to productivity, terrified of stillness. I've also met people with modest incomes who live like they're retired every day because they've chosen presence over postponement, depth over distraction, being overdoing. Retirement is not about how much you've saved. It's about how much you've awakened. So now we see the truth. The retirement myth is not just an economic idea. It's a philosophical prison. And the only way out is to stop asking, when can I retire? And start asking, what am I living for now? The real currency of life, redefining wealth, work, and what it means to be free. Now that we've pulled the curtain back and exposed the retirement myth for what it truly is, a cultural illusion, a tool of social control, a psychological postponement, we have to ask the most important question of all. If retirement is not the goal, then what is? What should we be striving for? What does it really mean to live well, to be wealthy, to be free? And here's where the truth hits hardest. You've been measuring your life in the wrong currency. You see, we've been conditioned to think that wealth is just money, that your bank balance determines your freedom, that your net worth is your self-worth. But that's a lie, a deep one. Because true wealth is not how much you have, it's how little you need to be at peace. It's not the size of your retirement account. It's the richness of your days, the depth of your relationships, the freedom of your time, and the clarity of your mind. That's the real currency. And the tragedy. Most people only start to realize this after retirement when it's too late to truly use it. Let's redefine wealth. Imagine waking up without an alarm clock. Imagine owning your time. Imagine having the emotional bandwidth to be present with your children, your partner, your friends, not just physically, but spiritually. Imagine doing work that reflects your values, not just your resume. Imagine being able to say no without guilt and yes without fear. That is freedom. That is real wealth. And here's the secret. You don't have to wait until you're 65 to have it. You can build that life now, but only if you stop chasing the wrong kind of success. Ask yourself, what do I trade away in the name of career progression? How many moments of stillness have you sacrificed for status? How many times have you told yourself, I'll relax when it's all done, even though it's never really done? The system wants you to believe that the grind is noble, that burnout is a badge of honor, that busyness equals value. But let me ask you something painful. What if your constant busyness is actually a form of avoidance? What if you're running so fast because you're afraid of what will surface when you finally stop? This is the philosophical cliff most people never cross. Because when you stop chasing, you start facing. You face questions like, who am I when I'm not achieving? What do I actually enjoy? Have I built a life I love or one I'm just surviving? These questions are terrifying, but they're also the gateway to a new kind of life, a life where you stop outsourcing meaning to the future and start cultivating it in the present. Let's talk about work. Not the kind of work that drains your soul, but the kind that gives you life. All too often, we see work and freedom as opposites, but they're not. Real work is not slavery. It's sacred. The problem isn't work, it's meaningless work. Work that feels disconnected from who you are. Work that serves only someone else's dream. The goal isn't to escape work forever. The goal is to create a life where the work you do is an expression of who you are, not a betrayal of it. That's the shift. Retirement says, one day, I'll stop doing what I hate. Freedom says, today, I'll start doing what I love. Retirement says later. Freedom says now. But to live like that requires something rare. It requires courage. The courage to downsize your lifestyle so you can upgrade your soul. The courage to say no to the script, even when everyone else is following it. The courage to choose time over toys, depth over distraction, meaning over money, and yes, sometimes even struggle over safety. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop organizing your life around comfort is the moment you start living a life that feels alive. Comfort zones are where dreams go to die. And the retirement fantasy is one giant comfort zone, a place where nothing is required of you and nothing is given to you either. No growth, no challenge, no fire, just quiet decline. But the soul doesn't want stagnation. It wants expansion. And that expansion doesn't happen in a rocking chair. It happens in the unknown, in the leap, in the risk, in the now. Let's get brutally honest. You don't need more money. You need more clarity. You don't need a better retirement plan. You need a better life plan. And life doesn't begin at retirement. It begins the moment you stop waiting. The moment you stop living like time is a bank account you can save. You can't. You can only spend it. And the tragedy? Most people spend it on things they don't love, for people they don't like, in places they don't enjoy, hoping that someday it'll all be worth it. But what if that someday never comes? Let me flip the script entirely. What if retirement isn't the goal, but the warning sign? What if the very idea that you have to wait decades to live freely is a red flag, a signal that something is broken, not in your finances, but in your philosophy? What if the problem isn't that retirement is too far away, but that you've accepted a life you want to retire from? So ask yourself now, am I building a life that's worth escaping, or a life that's worth waking up to? Because that's the real question. Not how much do I need to retire, but how much do I need to really live? And how can I start doing that now? Here's your challenge. Take 1 hour this week, just one, and sit in silence. No screens, no agenda, just you, a notebook, and one question. If I weren't afraid of running out of money or time, what would I do differently today? Write down what comes up, not what you should do, what your soul is begging to do. That's the beginning of your real life. That's the spark. Don't ignore it. Because in the end, the deepest lie of retirement isn't just that freedom comes later. It's that freedom isn't already possible. But it is. For you, right now. If you're willing to change the question from, when can I retire, to how can I live,